The North Atlantic, vast and unforgiving, swallowed Air India Flight 182 whole. A routine flight transformed into an unspeakable tragedy, leaving behind a wreckage of shattered lives and unanswered questions. 329 souls, their hopes, dreams, and futures extinguished in an instant. June 23, 1985, would forever be etched in memory, a stark reminder of the fragility of life. Families, torn apart by an act of unimaginable cruelty, searched for answers in the debris field. The world mourned with them, united in grief and disbelief. The magnitude of the loss was felt across continents. The whispers started subtly, circulating through the grief-stricken families and investigators. Could this have been anything other than a horrific accident? The possibility began to take root. The whispers grew louder, fueled by intelligence reports and the political climate of the time. The investigation quickly zeroed in on a chilling possibility: a bomb. The whispers transformed into pronouncements. This was no tragic accident. This was an act of terrorism, a calculated assault on innocent lives. Air India Flight 182, a Boeing 747 jumbo jet, stood on the tarmac at Montreal's Mirabel International Airport. For the 329 souls preparing to board, it represented a bridge between continents. They were a microcosm of the world itself, a tapestry woven from diverse cultures, backgrounds, and aspirations. Families, their faces alight with anticipation, shepherded excited children through the boarding gate. Young couples, their hands intertwined, whispered promises for the future. Businessmen, briefcases in hand, prepared for meetings in distant boardrooms. Each passenger carried their own unique story, oblivious to the dark fate that awaited them. Their journey began in Toronto, a city renowned for its multicultural mosaic and welcoming spirit. Air India Flight 182, designated AI-182, was a familiar sight at Pearson International Airport. Passengers, many of them Canadian citizens of Indian descent, boarded the aircraft with excitement and anticipation. The Boeing 747, christened Emperor Kanishka, soared into the Canadian sky. The first leg of the journey from Toronto to Montreal passed without incident. At Montreal's Mirabel International Airport, the aircraft paused before the long haul across the Atlantic. Passengers disembarked, stretching their legs, grabbing a bite to eat. Families gathered, children laughed, and conversations flowed easily. Little did they know that their brief respite in Montreal would be their last moments on solid ground. Unbeknownst to the unsuspecting passengers and crew of Air India Flight 182, a storm of political and religious tensions was brewing. In the years leading up to the tragedy, a wave of unrest had swept through the Indian state of Punjab. At the heart of the conflict lay the Golden Temple in Amritsar, the holiest shrine in Sikhism. In June 1984, the Indian government authorized Operation Blue Star, a military operation aimed at removing Sikh militants. The operation resulted in significant casualties and outraged Sikhs worldwide. The storming of the Golden Temple was seen by many Sikhs as a sacrilegious act. Outrage and grief morphed into anger and a thirst for revenge. Extremist groups such as the Babar Khalsa vowed to avenge the desecration of their holy site. Their anger found fertile ground among segments of the Sikh diaspora, particularly in Canada. Whispers of retaliation and revenge began to circulate, whispers that would soon transform into a terrifying reality. The seeds of discontent had been sown long before Operation Blue Star. The Sikh community had long harbored aspirations for greater autonomy within India. The creation of the state of Punjab in 1966 had become a source of further frustration. The Green Revolution, while ushering in an era of agricultural prosperity in Punjab, also exacerbated social and economic disparities. Accusations of discrimination and marginalization by the central government fueled resentment. The demand for Khalistan, an independent Sikh homeland, gained traction among some segments of the Sikh population. The assassination of Indira Gandhi in October 1984, carried out by her Sikh bodyguards, further inflamed tensions. Anti-Sikh riots erupted across India, leaving thousands dead. The violence sent shockwaves through the Sikh diaspora, igniting outrage and fueling calls for justice. In the aftermath of these events, the Babar Khalsa emerged as a powerful force within the Sikh separatist movement. Founded in 1978, the group had gained notoriety for its uncompromising stance. The bombing of Air India Flight 182 would become a chilling testament to their deadly intent. The Babar Khalsa styled itself as a defender of the Sikh faith and a champion of Sikh rights. Its ideology was rooted in a potent mix of religious fundamentalism, Sikh nationalism, and resentment of the Indian government. The group's ranks swelled in the aftermath of Operation Blue Star. Led by Talwinder Singh Parmar, the Babar Khalsa established a presence in several countries with significant Sikh populations. Parmar, who had immigrated to Canada in the early 1970s, used his base in British Columbia to raise funds and recruit members. Canadian authorities, while aware of Parmar's activities, were slow to react. The Canadian Security Intelligence Service had Parmar under surveillance, but failed to gather sufficient evidence. Undeterred by the scrutiny of law enforcement, Parmar and his lieutenants continued to operate with impunity. The bombing of Air India Flight 182 would be their most audacious and deadly operation. In the months leading up to the bombing of Air India Flight 182, a sinister plot was taking shape. Motivated by a desire for revenge, they sought to inflict maximum damage upon India. The plan was to plant bombs on Air India flights departing from Canada. The bombs, concealed within luggage, would be timed to detonate mid-flight. The plotters communicated using code words and clandestine meetings. They procured explosives, assembled the bombs, and conducted reconnaissance at airports. Their target was not random. Air India represented a powerful symbol of national pride and a tangible link between India and its diaspora. An attack on Air India would result in a high number of casualties and strike at the heart of India's international image. The stage was set for a tragedy that would leave an enduring scar on the world. The intricate workings of an airport provided a chilling backdrop for the Babar Khalsa's deadly plot. Amidst the bustling crowds, a suitcase, innocuous in appearance, made its way through the baggage handling system. The bomb, meticulously crafted and concealed within the lining of a hard-sided Samsonite suitcase, had begun its journey days earlier. The suitcase, its deadly cargo hidden from view, was checked in at Vancouver International Airport. The passenger who checked the bag, a man traveling under an assumed name, never boarded the plane. He vanished into the crowd, leaving behind a trail of false leads. The bag continued its journey through the airport's underbelly, passing through X-ray scanners and the hands of baggage handlers. Security protocols proved woefully inadequate, a tragic testament to the evolving nature of terrorism and the challenges of safeguarding civilian aviation. As Air India Flight 182 made its way across the Atlantic, a chilling prelude to the tragedy was unfolding on the other side of the world. At Narita International Airport in Tokyo, Japan, another Air India flight, AI-301, was preparing for departure. A second suitcase bomb, identical to the one destined for Flight 182, had been checked in at Vancouver International Airport. It had passed through security checkpoints, its lethal contents undetected, but fate had other plans. As baggage handlers at Narita Airport were transferring luggage, the bomb detonated prematurely. The explosion killed 2 baggage handlers and sent shockwaves through the airport. The blast, initially attributed to an industrial accident, would soon take on a more sinister significance. The shadow of Narita served as a stark reminder of the interconnected nature of the world and the global reach of terrorism. High above the Atlantic Ocean, Air India Flight 182 cruised at 31,000 feet. Passengers, their anxieties about the long journey behind them, settled into their routines. Families shared meals, children played in the aisles, and the hum of the engines provided a soothing background. Unbeknownst to them, a silent drama was unfolding in the belly of the aircraft. The suitcase bomb, its timer ticking down to its deadly conclusion, lay nestled among the passengers' luggage. The bomb was set to detonate at approximately 8:15 a.m. Irish Standard Time, just as the aircraft was passing over a remote stretch of the North Atlantic. The pilots, unaware of the deadly cargo they carried, maintained their course and altitude. The flight attendants tended to the passengers' needs, offering refreshments and ensuring their comfort. In the passenger cabin, the atmosphere was one of anticipation and excitement. Families looked forward to reuniting with loved ones. Tourists eagerly anticipated exploring new destinations. None could have imagined that their journey was about to end in unimaginable tragedy. At 8:14 a.m. Irish Standard Time, the unthinkable happened. The suitcase bomb detonated in the forward cargo hold of Air India Flight 182. The explosion ripped through the aircraft with unimaginable force, tearing the Boeing 747 apart in mid-air. The deafening roar of the explosion echoed across the remote expanse of the North Atlantic. The aircraft disintegrated into a maelstrom of metal, fuel, and human remains, scattering debris across a wide swath of the ocean. The violence of the explosion was such that it was recorded on seismographs hundreds of miles away. The tranquil blue canvas of the morning sky was instantly marred by a plume of black smoke. For the 329 souls on board Air India Flight 182, there was no warning, no time to react, no chance of survival. Their hopes, dreams, and futures were extinguished in an instant. The world watched in horror as the news of the Air India Flight 182 disaster unfolded. In the immediate aftermath of the explosion, an eerie silence descended upon the once bustling aircraft. The screams of passengers were swallowed by the roar of the explosion and the rush of wind as the aircraft plummeted. The disintegration of the Boeing 747 was swift and merciless. The forward section of the aircraft was obliterated, its occupants instantly killed by the blast. The remaining sections tumbled through the air, their descent a chaotic spectacle. As news of the Air India Flight 182 disaster spread, a wave of shock and disbelief washed over the world. The senseless loss of 329 lives, an act of terrorism, left people reeling. News organizations scrambled to cover the tragedy, interrupting regular programming with live updates. Images of wreckage and grieving relatives filled screens, a stark reminder of the human cost. World leaders expressed condolences and condemned the bombing. Queen Elizabeth II was deeply shocked and distressed by the tragedy. Canadian Prime Minister Brian Mulroney called the bombing an act of unspeakable barbarity. In India, the news was met with widespread grief and outrage. Flags flew at half-mast and the nation observed a day of mourning. Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi called the bombing a monstrous act of terrorism. The bombing marked a turning point in the fight against terrorism. The world mourned the loss, a testament to human empathy and shared outrage. The North Atlantic, now a churning graveyard of dreams, held its secrets close. The wreckage of Air India Flight 182, scattered across miles of unforgiving ocean, offered fragmented clues. The investigation began in the shadow of unimaginable loss, a desperate search for answers. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police, along with international investigators, faced a daunting task. The vastness of the crash site and the depth of the ocean presented unprecedented challenges. Every piece of debris, every fragment of human remains held a silent plea for justice. As investigators pieced together the wreckage of Air India Flight 182, a chilling pattern emerged. Missed signals, ignored warnings, and bureaucratic inertia allowed terrorists to slip through the cracks. The ghosts of signals past echoed with the weight of 329 lost lives. Intelligence reports pointed to credible threats against Air India flights. The Babar Khalsa, under surveillance, targeted Air India. Despite warnings, security measures at Canadian airports remained lax. The investigation revealed a systemic failure and missed opportunities. The investigation into the bombing of Air India Flight 182 quickly zeroed in on the Sikh extremist group Babar Khalsa. The group's history of violence and its presence in Canada made them the prime suspects. The weight of suspicion fell heavily on the Sikh community in Canada. The community faced increased scrutiny and, in some cases, outright discrimination. The wheels of justice, often slow and cumbersome, seemed to grind to a virtual halt in the aftermath of the Air India bombing. The investigation, sprawling and complex, dragged on for years, hampered by bureaucratic hurdles and legal challenges. The families of the victims, their grief compounded by frustration, watched as the investigation seemed to stall. Years turned into decades, and still, the masterminds behind the bombing remained elusive. The Canadian government appointed a Royal Commission of Inquiry in 1985. The commission, led by Justice John Major, held public hearings for over 2 years. The commission's report, released in 1990, was scathing in its indictment of the Canadian government's response. The bombing of Air India Flight 182 left an indelible scar on Canada, a nation that prided itself on its multiculturalism and openness. The tragedy exposed dark undercurrents of extremism, challenging the nation's self-image. For the families, the bombing was a wound that refused to heal. Their grief was compounded by the slow pace of justice. The Sikh community faced suspicion and discrimination. The Canadian government took steps to address the shortcomings. However, the scars remained, a reminder of the human cost of hatred. Decades have passed since Air India Flight 182 vanished, leaving shattered lives and unanswered questions. The official inquiry identified failures but failed to provide closure. The masterminds behind the bombing remain elusive, their crimes unanswered. Time has dulled grief, but not the haunting whispers of the tragedy. Whispers of conspiracies and justice denied linger. The bombing of Air India Flight 182 stands as a stark reminder of the human cost of hatred and the devastating consequences of extremism. The tragedy prompted a reassessment of security protocols and intelligence sharing practices. Families of the victims have shown remarkable resilience and courage in their pursuit of justice. Their unwavering commitment honors the memory of their loved ones. The legacies of loss are woven into the fabric of a nation forever changed. The memory of those lost serves as a beacon for a more just and compassionate world.